Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I'm in a bit of a mess right now, and I really need some insight into whether I'm in the wrong here. I, 31 female, am a chef, and my husband, 32 male, is Asian, while I'm white. My in-laws, especially my husband's mom, have always looked down on me because of my job. In their eyes, their son should have married a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer, much like the rest of their family. They have this impression that being a chef has little salary. I'm actually doing quite well for myself. I'm a co-owner of a small restaurant chain with 3 other restaurants, and we opened a new one right here in the city where I live, just last year. It's been doing pretty well, and we even went mildly viral on TikTok. Our restaurant was trending and made it hard to get reservations. One day, my sister-in-law approached me. She was unusually very friendly for some reason. It turned out she wanted to book a table for 6 people at my restaurant. I told her our restaurant was fully booked for 6 months. She insisted that I pull some strings. I asked her what the purpose of the dinner was, and she said her husband was getting promoted and she would like to have a nice dinner to celebrate it. I told her I would get back to her after talking with my co-partner about the reservation. It was hard to convince my co-partner. When I told him it was an important family matter as an excuse, he finally agreed. I called my sister-in-law and told her when the reservation was confirmed. However, just a few days before the dinner, I heard that my brother-in-law's parents were coming to the dinner, and that made 6 people already if my mother-in-law was coming. I only got a reserve for 6. I called my sister-in-law about this, and she said she never said I was invited to the dinner. I was in complete shock at her words. It was already suspicious from the start, but I assumed I was at least invited to the dinner that I worked hard to reserve. I felt sick to my stomach, so I went to tell my husband about it, and guess what? He already knew from the start. It's obvious to say I was very furious. I couldn't believe that my husband, the person who was supposed to be on my side, had been complicit in keeping me out of the celebration. I let my anger show, and let's just say things got pretty heated. They tried to explain that it was meant to be a family-only dinner to calm me down, but I was still absolutely livid. It was like they were saying I didn't even deserve to be part of their family, right after they made me do all the work. Nonetheless, I just couldn't let it go. I cancelled the reservation at my own restaurant. Sister-in-law was not happy about it, and she called me, made sure to lash me out, saying that she was planning to announce a pregnancy during the dinner, and I had ruined that. Even my brother-in-law and my in-laws piled in on the criticism, and even my husband was on their side. I held my ground and told them to suck it up. I regretted going into hoops just to reserve the dinner I wasn't even invited to. I didn't talk to my husband and even asked him to leave our house for a while. I just couldn't take it. Now I'm here wondering if I overreacted. Am I the a-hole for cancelling the reservation when I was excluded from a family dinner at my own restaurant? Update. Hello again, Reddit. I wanted to provide a brief update on the situation. After the dust settled from the heated argument, my husband and I had a long conversation. He told me he realized how much he had wronged me by not standing up for me and by keeping me in the dark about the dinner. I've forgiven him, and we've been working on rebuilding our relationship, and I can genuinely say that we're making progress. But when it comes to my in-laws, the situation remains quite different. I just couldn't forgive them for their actions. Their treatment of me and their unapologetic behavior has left a lasting scar. So I've cut ties with my in-laws. It's not a decision I've taken lightly, but it's one that I feel is necessary for my own well-being and peace of mind. My husband understands me and supports my decision. I appreciate all the support and advice I received from the Reddit community. Thank you to everyone who commented and offered their advice. You're not the a-hole, OP. I'm glad your husband has regained some of his senses and he apologized. Your in-laws are a-holes for how they treat you, your sister-in-law especially. Like who celebrates in a family member's restaurant and then tells them they were not invited for the celebration because it's family only. Does that mean that you're not part of their family? Your decision to go no contact with them is the right one for yourself and your mental health. I wish you and your husband well. I hope he has learned to stand up for you. Story 2. I, 30 female, have 3 brothers, J, 35, P, 32, R, 24. Our parents passed away 6 years ago in a car crash. Before they died, we would usually do Sunday dinner at their house. Around a year after their death, I decided to take over this tradition and host family dinners, mostly because I inherited their house. 4 years ago, me and my boyfriend welcomed our son into the world. After that, our family dinners would consist of me, my boyfriend, our son, J, J's husband, P and R. Now here comes the problem. P does not like relationships very much. Since he was a teen, he's had a revolving door of girlfriends. This is not a problem as long as he's honest and treats them well. I don't really care if he settles down or not. The problem is that he would bring these girls to family dinners. He would bring a girl 2-3 times and then break up. His relationships last roughly 3 months at most. Then it would be a couple of weeks of no date and then he would bring a new girl. Until the latter part of 2019, he brought a girl over. They had been dating for a month. She had baked cookies, peanut butter cookies. My son is very allergic to this. P knows this. The 4 of us, me, son, P and P's date, were in the kitchen when I needed to leave the room to fix something. I asked P to watch my son, which he said was okay, and then I reminded him to not let son eat any cookies. But apparently, P's date thought we were silly for not allowing son cookies and fed him one. And then chaos. We had to go to the hospital and it was all a mess. I was scared out of my mind. When we got home, P was super apologetic, but I was still furious and told him no new effing girlfriends in my home and he accepted. He kept his promise and then COVID happened, so we obviously didn't have any family dinners during that. But as things calmed down and we all got vaxxed, we started having family dinners again. P hasn't brought a date yet. Now, shit hit the fan yesterday. My brother R is super shy and has never brought a girlfriend home before. But he has started seeing a girl now and they have been dating for around 4 months. He asked if it was okay to bring her to dinner. I said of course. Yesterday she was over. It went really well. When the 2 of them left, P confronted me. He said I had told him no new girlfriends. I told him that he couldn't bring any new girlfriends. If he could stay in a relationship for more than 6 months, she was welcome to join. But I don't want any more strangers in my home and around my son. I had let it get far enough when the last one came around and should have put my foot down earlier. P said I was discriminating against him and called me an a-hole and left. My boyfriend, J and J's husband are on my side, but I'm wondering if I'm being too harsh on my brother. I just don't want a bunch of girls I barely know around my son. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole OP. It's not so much his short-term relationships that I would consider the problem. It's that you can't trust him. He knew of your son's allergy. There is no excuse for anyone to bring any food to your home unless they can personally vouch for the fact that it's safe for your son. You could grant special permission for it, but they would have to ask you first. P also has nothing to confront you about. Any rules you make for him don't automatically apply to someone else. And no permissions you grant to anyone else automatically apply to him. Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. As abhorrent as the actions of his date were that day with the cookies, his inaction is much worse. He can't blame stranger girlfriends on the fact that he knew his nephew was allergic to the treat his date brought. And despite being warned minutes before to not allow the allergen near your child, he still sat there and watched his date give the allergen to your kid. P has proven if forced to choose between his latest fling and family, he would submit to his fling. Not the a-hole. Setting a time limit of a minimum length of relationship before someone comes to family dinner seems perfectly reasonable, especially given the history. Maybe your brother could argue that it's not fair he has to wait 6 months when his brother brought along his girlfriend of 4 months. So you could potentially make that concession, but honestly, I think you're more than justified with your current stance. If P can't be bothered to vet his short-term partners for common sense, you are not obligated to do it for him. He feels victimized because you suddenly have boundaries. I think I'm guessing he has not encountered consistently. He is free to come and go as he pleases. He's proved himself bad at protecting his nephew from his date du jour. So you removed the variable out of necessity. The proper response to his accusation of favoritism should be, if R's girlfriend sends my son to the ER for doing something she was asked not to do, R would be given the same boundary, not the a-hole. Story 3. This happened in 2019 but has recently been brought back up, hence my post. Necessary background. I'm half French, dad, half American, mom. When I was 11, my family moved from the States to France. I lived there during the school year and spent summers back in the US. Growing up, I had a cousin, Jane, who I was never very close with. When I moved to France, she was outwardly jealous at first, but then started using it to brag to her friends, because it meant she got to visit us there pretty often. We don't live in Paris, but Jane was always telling people about how she went to Paris all the time. When we got older, the bragging stopped because they didn't visit as much and she became hostile towards me. I cut contact and figured that was the end of it. In autumn 2019, I got married in France and invited all my American family. Husband and I live near a small castle that's rented out as a gîte, kind of like a holiday home, so we paid for my family to stay there since there isn't enough room at the house. Jane was invited because I didn't think it would be right to exclude her when her siblings were coming. In France in the autumn, there is a huge culture of going mushrooming. We went as a family and everyone loved it except Jane. She spent the whole time complaining and making nasty comments. When my mother-in-law and I were making dinner for everyone using the mushrooms we had picked, Jane came into the kitchen and said, "Wow, I didn't realize you were so poor that you had to eat stuff you picked off the forest floor," and then walked out. I was so ashamed but also so thankful my mother-in-law doesn't speak a lot of English. She ate around the mushrooms at dinner and kept making disgusted faces. A few days later, we went to a nice restaurant for dinner. Jane ordered a dish with the same mushrooms she had been disgusted by, but since this was an expensive restaurant, she wouldn't shut up about how incredible the food was, how the mushrooms were so much better than anything you could get in the States, and how she couldn't wait to go to the market to buy some. So I told her she wouldn't have needed to buy any if she had participated more in the mushrooming, since they were the same, but we got ours for free. When I said that, she completely stopped eating her meal and refused to interact with me for the rest of the trip. There was a huge rift in the family because she left the day before the wedding and spent the rest of her time in Paris. My aunt was furious that I had publicly insulted Jane and was very cold towards me for the rest of their time here. Recently, we've been wanting to plan a family reunion for when things are safe, but my aunt is saying she and Jane wouldn't come after how I treated her. Am I the a-hole for my comment? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole. How did you insult her? That doesn't even make sense. You told her a fact. Facts aren't insulting. They are just facts. Now if you said, "Listen you dumbass, you realize you're eating the same mushrooms you just shit all over the other day, right?" Which is still the truth but a little less kind. LOL, your cousin is a brat. Good riddance. I wouldn't want a cousin or aunt at my family reunion if they can't even act like adults. Not the a-hole. Your cousin was being a massive brat and was being disrespectful. Not only was she rude to the entire wedding, but was completely disrespecting the whole cultural aspect of mushroom picking. She is just straight up ignorant and needs to fix her attitude. Also want to add, how are you insulting her? If you worded it another way, possibly I could get it as an insult. But if you said exactly what you posted, that was simply you telling her what was in her dish. Not the a-hole. As an American, this is further proof our education system is failing. Who doesn't know where mushrooms grow? Did your cousin think mushrooms used at that restaurant came from Louis Vuitton or something? Oh, and good riddance to them. Your cousin had no problem insulting you based on her opinion, but once you insult her with facts, she wants to act all butthurt. I would just take this as a blessing. Don't have to invite her or her mom anywhere now. Their loss. Less excuses for them to get to their beloved Paris.